So let's talk a little bit about fire extinguishers. Fire extinguishers, the portable kind, the kind that you hold on to, come in several different varieties. The first of which is a pressurized water system. They look like the old-fashioned ones that the firemen have on it. The cylinders are silver, big around, tall, they have a handle on them. There's a pressure gauge on them. It is simply a big canister filled about 3/4 of the way, half the way with water, the other half with pressurized air. As you release the pressurized air, it forces the water out of the hose, and you can use that to fight a fire. There are also dry chemical fire extinguishers. You've seen those kind where you push the handle. Most of the ones we have in our homes are the dry chemical type. You push the handle and a powder comes out and covers up a fire. The other one is the one that you've seen. They're much similar to the water ones, but they have kind of a big nozzle on them, a big open kind of a big nozzle on them. Those are carbon dioxide fire extinguishers. That uses carbon dioxide to put out a fire. And then for the metal types, the D types, there are several other specialized fire extinguishers that we as the general public are usually not able to get a hand on. The water fire extinguisher usually carries about 2.5 gallons. There's any quick math in here about how much 2.5 gallons of water weighs. So those water ones weigh about 25 pounds, right? So you have those 25 pounds. The nice part about those, the water shoots out pretty far. 25, 30, 40 feet. It shoots a long distance. But they're under a lot of pressure. You can actually hurt somebody by pointing it at them at close range and hitting them with it. And the canisters are usually silver. The other kind of up or downside with the water one is because it is under so much pressure, if you were to shoot it at, let's say, a pile of papers that were on fire, you will probably scatter the burnt papers in the direction that you're firing at. It kind of puts out that much pressure. So you have to be careful when you're pointing a water fire extinguisher that you don't blast out all the things that were on fire. The dry chemical fire, the ones that we normally have in our houses, are the ones that shoot out a powder. That powder, they weigh a lot less. Those ones usually only weigh somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3 or 4 pounds. And so they are much easier to carry around inside, especially inside a home or that kind of garage, that kind of thing. Rather than wheeling around a 25-pound fire extinguisher, they weigh about 4 or 5 pounds. The downside of them is that you've got to get pretty close to that fire. Unlike the water one that you can shoot from 25 or 30 feet away, the dry chemical one, you need to be within about 10 or 15 feet of the fire to fight it, because that's about the range that it has. Also, after you pull that trigger, you're going to have dry chemicals everywhere. So you have to realize that once you pull that trigger, you're kind of creating a mess. You put out the fire, but you're creating a mess. The other downside to them is you probably have somewhere between 10 and 20 seconds of time to fight the fire. Those canisters will only go for about 20 seconds. So if you hold the thing pointed at you, have count to about 20, that's all the firefighting time you have. So you're limited to the size of fire that you can fight. The carbon dioxide fire extinguishers are about the same size, the same pound weight as the water ones, but they are really, really good at removing the oxygen out of the area. They also have a pretty short duration. They're very loud, by the way. If you've ever heard one go off, they are pretty piercingly loud. But they also last for somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds as well. But their range is even shorter still than the dry chemical. You need to be you need to be within less than 10 feet, usually, give or take, of the fire to put it out with one of the carbon dioxide fire extinguishers. In fact, if you ever watch the show Mythbusters on the Discovery Channel, that is their fire extinguisher of choice. They always run around with a carbon dioxide fire extinguisher. That's one that they use all the time.
Does that just pump out gas?
Carbon dioxide, CO2, yeah, under pressure, and they're very cold. They shoot when you hit something, they turn the area very cold. So how do each of those work on the different fires? Well, a water fire, how would you think a water fire extinguisher would put out a fire? Which of those, remember the fire triangle? Which one of those do you think it works on?
It would remove the heat.
It does, it removes the heat. The water radically shuts down the heat of that fire triangle. Fire triangle collapses, fire goes out. What about the chemical one? What do you think it does?
Removes the fuel because it stops the vapors from coming out of the wood.
Well, yes, the last part was absolutely right. It actually stops the chemical reaction. It stops the chemical reaction from whatever it is to stop it from outgassing and turning to gas, and so it breaks that fire triangle that way. It breaks the chain reaction of going from a solid to a gas and then igniting. The carbon dioxide one, how do you think it stops the fire?
It takes out the oxygen.
It takes out the oxygen, and so it no longer has the oxygen to fight the fire. Okay? So now that we know a little bit about how to fight a fire, about what a fire is and how it works, well, let's talk a little bit about how to fight one. Emergencies occur in our homes and all those kinds of things, or can occur in our homes fairly often. And so we need to know how to stop a fire from happening at its outset. So in an emergency, the two likeliest ways of a fire getting started, let's say after an earthquake or a tornado or something like that, is either spark from electricity or a broken gas main. So to stop those two, one of the things we need to know is how to turn off the circuit breakers. The two things you need to know is, if it's started by electricity or gas, is how to shut those two off. So in your home, there should be a main circuit breaker panel. So you need to know how to turn those circuit breakers off. If it's in a home, it's usually somewhere on the back side of your house, maybe in a garage or something like that, and you open the circuit breaker panel, you'll find individual circuit breakers. To get to those, to turn the circuit breakers off, you would turn off each of the individual circuit breakers and then the main circuit breaker at the top. But turn those all the way off to make sure that there's no sparks that will be caused to create fires. If you have an older home that has fuses, you need to unscrew each of the fuses out of each of the circuits and then pull the main breaker box. There's a handle right at the top of the box. You pull it up, pull that handle all the way out, and make sure that it can come out. What I suggest you do in your home is to go and experiment with those. Some of those circuit breakers have probably not been flipped for a very long time in your home. It would be terrible to know if they're frozen open. So you can go to your home, turn each of the circuit breakers off. But realize once you do that, you're going to have to go back to your bedroom and set your alarm clock. It'll be flashing 12. So that's okay. Small price to pay to know that each of the circuit breakers in your home works and has not shorted out and works the way it's supposed to. If it doesn't, if it's stuck in the open position or won't reclose when you try and turn the circuit back on, it'd be best to know now rather than an emergency. You can go down to your local hardware store or a big box store and buy one of the circuits, a new circuit breaker, and put it in. They're very easy to take in, take out. The instructions for doing that are usually on the inside of your circuit box, or you can go search the web and ask them. They're very easy. They actually just pop in and pop out. There shouldn't be any tools required other than maybe a screwdriver to get underneath the circuit to pop the circuit breaker out. And they're fairly inexpensive. It's an inexpensive way of being able to do a little preventative maintenance on your home. Same thing with if you have an old style fuse. You pull the fuses out. Those fuses might not have been taken out for years and years. Not a bad idea to take them out and replace them with some new ones. Pull that main circuit breaker, that circuit box, and see if it goes out, and you can go back in. If it doesn't, also you can go to your big box store, favorite hardware store, get a new one, put it in. So for the cost of probably less than the cost of dinner, you know that you have some security and peace of mind in your home.